it's not super challenging. Probability and odds. Once you know what each of those words mean, just like commutative, just like associative, it's easy questions. So you just have to know what probability is asking and what odds are asking. I'm going to explain those the best that I can today. So hopefully it won't be that hard. Somebody mentioned we're going to do a quiz review at the end of class. That is true. We're going to do a quiz review. But during that math meeting this morning, we also talked about eliminating the chapter quiz. So instead, we just have those daily quizzes, and those will make up your whole quiz grade. So we're not doing a big quiz. So those daily quizzes will make your quiz grade. So a lot of you will have 100% across the board on quizzes, which is awesome. Okay? We will have chapter test. So how we're going to do that is we're still going to review at the end of class today. It will still be called a quiz review, even though we're not going to have a quiz. So what we're going to do is review today. Next class period, I'm going to make a test review, and y'all will work on that alone for the first half, see what you can do, and then together on the second half of class, just to see if there's anything that you don't understand. I think most of you will get that review done during that time. You should. We got an hour and a half for it. I'll allow you to sit outside at the tables and stuff like that. It's going to be a more relaxed day just because it was planned for the quiz, and so now it's just a filler day until we get back on track because we're not doing those quizzes. Okay? So we will have a 1.10 daily quiz on that day, though. So the beginning of class will still have a daily quiz. It just won't have a real quiz. All right? Okay, so probability and odds. First, we're going to talk about probability. Probability. So here are the vocab terms for this. Again, won't be quizzed or test on the vocab terms, but they are included in the question, so you need to know how to read the question. An experiment is an occurrence in which the outcome is uncertain. Okay? Anything is an experiment because you don't know what's going to happen. Sample space, set of all the possible outcomes. So if I've got a quarter here, the sample space is what? Anybody know? All the outcomes that could happen if I flipped it. Heads and tails, the sample space. The event, a subset of the sample space. The event is what you want to happen. So the event on a coin could just be heads, or the event could be tails. So if you look at the next page, that's exactly what we've written out. Heads versus tails. The entire sample space is everything that could happen. The event is what you want to happen. So I'm going to take these and just throw them, and I want you to grab two of them. And remember what they say. Remember what they say, heads or tails. Remember what the two you picked up, because I'm going to ask you what they are. Remember the two that you picked up, remember what was facing up. Let's see if probability works. It hadn't worked on one class. One class we got really bad odds, if you can tell. Okay? Alright. So, now that y'all have all picked up your quarters, let's see. What were yours? 2 heads. It's already a bad sign. 2 heads. That's even more of a bad sign. 2 tails. There we go. 2 tails. We're back on track. 2 heads. Man. Did y'all plan to pick up 2 of the same thing? Heads and tails. Oh, split them. Heads and tails. Okay. So, it's pretty close to even. It's not exactly. But part of that is because we had a small sample. Okay? I only threw 14 quarters. Okay? If I threw 100 quarters, it would end up being closer and closer to that 50-50 range. It would probably, if you flipped a quarter 100 times, a lot of the time you'd be between 55 and 45 on those. Okay? It would be very, very close because the probability is 50%. You're going to end up being one of those two because there's only 2 options. Okay? If I flipped 2 quarters at the same time, this isn't on your notes, but if I flipped 2 quarters at the same time, what would our sample space be? So we could have one that was heads, right? Then we have another option that is tails, tails. Then we have another option that is heads, tails. And then we have one more option, tails and heads. Okay, so that could be a sample space. You might see a question like that on homework. But that could be a sample space. If my event was one of the quarters being heads, and I flipped 2. If my event was just one of them being heads, what you want would be 1, 2, 3 of those options. So you'd have a 3 out of 4 chance that one of your quarters would land on heads. Okay? So that's kind of how this works. We want what we want on the top over everything that could happen. Okay? So here it is right here written out. What we want to happen over everything that could happen. And then this is how it's written. Probability of what you want is the number of things that you want over the number of things that could happen. That's what that N means. Okay, so moving on to a die. So a quarter has 2 sides. How many sides does a die have? 6. Just so you know, a die is the singular version of dice. If you didn't know, that's what a die is. So if I rolled a die, what's the probability of it landing on a 3? 1 person say it. I didn't know what. 1/6. Which is that what 18% is, Caden? Okay. So it is 1 out of those 6 sides. What about an even number? How many even numbers are there on a die? 3. So 3 out of all the 6 sides, which we can simplify to 1/2. Half of the time, we should get an even number. So if you roll a die, that's the same probability as you flip a coin, as long as you're talking about an even number. Okay, less than 5. How many numbers on a die are less than 5? 4 of them. Be careful with those words less than, not less than or equal to. It's just less than 5. So there's 4 of them out of the 6. We can also simplify that to 2/3. Less than 10. How many numbers are less than 10? All of them. So that's what we want on the top. So 6 over what can happen is also 6. So our probability of that is 1 or 100%. A number greater than 6. There's 0. 0 out of everything simplifies to 0. Okay? So that's how we figure that stuff out. We put what we want on the top. We put everything that could happen on the bottom. All right? Fill out the next page. And then after you fill out the whole page, check with somebody next to you, see if y'all got the same fractions. Okay, for the first one, number 2 is rolled. 1/6. 1/6, because there's only 1 2 on a 6-sided die. On your homework, it'll talk about a 12-sided die, so it's going to be the same stuff, except we're going to have a 12 on the bottom. Okay? Number less than 4? 1/2, because there's 3 out of the 6, which simplifies to 1/2. Next, number greater than 7.
0.
There's nothing greater than 7 out of the total, and that equals 0. Less than 7. Everything is less than 7, which equals a 1. Okay, before we continue, I did this to the other class, so I'm going to do it to you. Caden, heads or tails? You think he's going to be right? No, it's heads. Sorry. Sarah?
Tails.
No, it's heads. Okay, Isaiah?
Heads.
Heads?
Oh,
Okay.
It's on his hand. Yeah,
I did that to the other class, so I had to do it to you. All right, next. We're going to make our sample size a little bit bigger, but it's still the same concept. Okay? So a deck of cards has 52 cards in it. What is the probability that Caden draws a king here? 4 out of 52, which does simplify.
I draw a king.
He got a king.
Wow.
There we go. Okay, so he had a 4 out of 52 probability. 4 out of 52, and that simplifies to 1 out of 13. No, 1 out of, yeah, is that right? Yeah, 1 out of 13. Okay, 1 out of 13. So he got lucky on that one. That's good. Yes, that is lucky if you got a 1 out of 13 chance.
It's not a heart, though.
No, not yet. We're going to go for the King of Hearts in just a second. You know who got the King of Hearts? Sam. He drew the King of Hearts when I asked him to. It was pretty amazing. All right. What about Olivia? Did you get a heart?
One.
No way. All right, so what are the odds that she just drew a heart?
1/4.
No. 12? Out of 52?
There are 13 hearts. So, 13 out of 52, which simplifies to 1/4. Okay, we've got 2 for 2. Who thinks they can draw the King of Hearts? All right, King of Hearts. King of Hearts, King of Hearts.
See, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch a tiger by its toe. I'm fun, just a joker.
Ah,
That's
of
funny, I
course.
got the Joker.
Yeah, of course Isaiah gets the Joker. So, King of Hearts.
1 out of
That one was a lot harder, obviously. So what is that?
1 out.
1 out of 52.
At least it's an ace.
Okay, last ace. How many aces are there? 4 out of the 52.
1/13.
So let's see if somebody can draw an ace. Who has not drawn?
Joshy, you haven't
John and
drawn.
John. Draw that ace.
Jonah, if you don't do this, I'm disappointed.
It's gonna be 9.
Joker.
9. But a queer.
Ah, come on.
Come on, Jonah.
Come on. We almost got... Oh, we got half of them. That's good. Okay, before we move on, because I have this deck of cards out. Okay, probability to odds. If we're given the probability, I want to figure out how to turn it into odds. Odds are different than probability. Okay? Probability is what you want out of everything that happens. Odds are what you want compared to what you don't want. Okay? So it uses up everything, but it does not have everything on either side of that fraction. So odds in favor of what you want goes on the top of the fraction. Odds against what you want goes on the bottom of the fraction. Okay? It'll make more sense once we start tying a little bit of numbers in. So let's look at the numbers. Okay, in favor of. So first, what we want goes on the top. So if we're rolling a die, how many options are what we want? We want a 2. So how many options on the die? Just one option. Okay? And then what is what we don't want?
5.
So this is different than the probability of 1 out of 6. This is comparing what we want to what we don't want. You've also seen it written probably like this.
Yeah.
Okay? Ratio. 1 to 5 odds is what it's called. 1 to 5 odds. Okay? Odds against rolling a 2. So this time what we want goes on the bottom. Right? So there's against compared to what we want. So it's 5 to 1 odds. Okay, so let's take this. Let me preface this by saying I'm not promoting gambling, but let me show you how this ties into your real life in some way. Did anyone see or hear about the fight this weekend?
Yes.
Right? With Mayweather and McGregor. Okay? So, I heard, I'm not sure if it stayed this way, but at one point, Mayweather was supposed to have a 5 to 1 odds. Okay? That means if you bet on McGregor, if you bet $100 on him, how much would you win? 500. Because it's 1 to 5 odds. He probably won't win, so if you risk, you get a greater reward. Does that make sense? So then if we were talking about Mayweather, he's probably going to win. So in order to win money on him, you got to bet more. Okay? So if you bet 500, you could only win $100 because he was probably going to win anyway. They're not going to give you a bigger payout because you didn't risk much because he was probably going to win. Does that make sense? Okay? the higher the risk, the more that you get from it. So if I roll the die and I bet you I'm going to roll a 2. These are my odds. So if I bet $100, I'd win 500. Okay? All right, let's think about when, let's not do this one at the bottom yet. Let's think about when Sam drew the King of Hearts. What were the odds that he would draw? Not the probability, the odds. Okay, so don't confuse it with what we're talking about down at the bottom on this. Don't confuse it with this yet. Okay? So 1 out of 51. So if I said, I bet you $100, again, not promoting it, but if I said, I bet you $100, Sam will draw the King of Hearts. So most of the time, he won't draw the King of Hearts, and I'll just lose my $100. But I risked so much that if he does draw that, you get 5,100.
Oh.
Does that make sense? That's why odds are so crazy, because yes, you risked like crazy. If you bet $100, you're probably going to lose that. But in the small chance that he gets it, you win $5,000 more than what you bet. Okay? So that's why odds, that's why people say the terms like play the odds, or with sports, Vegas puts people at a certain odds, like a college team winning or losing. That's what that means, is because most likely one team's going to win. So if you bet on the underdog, you're going to win more money. Okay? So that's just tying it into something that you understand better. Again, don't say that I'm promoting gambling, because I'm not. I put a bunch of disclaimers in this video, just in case. Okay? So odds in favor of a red queen. How many red queens? There are 2. And odds in favor of, so we put the 2 on the top. So what goes on the bottom? 50. Because it's whatever's left over. It's not out of the whole. That can be simplified to 1 over 25, or I'm just going to put it straight into the ratio of 1 to 25.
So that 20, you get $25,000.
Yes. Okay? But again, that's bad odds. It's going to be very rare. Okay? Not as rare. As amazing as it was when Sam drew that King of Hearts. That was pretty amazing.
Did anybody else draw anything that day? I did.
No.
So we drew. So we're the best.
Yeah, y'all drew the most correct things. He just drew the one with the least odds of happening, which was pretty cool. Okay, so that was how to change probability to odds. Now if they give us the odds, we want to switch it back to probability. So if I know that 2 things are what I want and 5 things are what I don't want, the probability is what I want over everything. So what is everything?
2 over 7.
2 over 7. Because we take what I want and add it to what I don't want to get the total amount of things that could happen. Okay? So probability and odds. How is this? Pretty easy? Okay? But it's because you understand what the terms mean. So you got to understand what the terms mean, and then these are easy problems. Okay? We will have a daily quiz over that on, today's Wednesday, on Friday we'll have a daily quiz over that. Okay? It will just be over that, so there will only be 1 section. It will still be 6 questions, so just keep that in mind. But I think we're all going to get a pretty good grade on it. Okay? Any questions on it? Anything at all? Anything that I need to go back to?